He got his wife fired from work to put his mistress in her place. When she found out, she fled with their daughter, and what she did next, no one was prepared to see. The silence had a weight, an almost tangible texture in the Thompson household. It was a silence that gathered in the corners, that settled over the expensive furniture and seeped under the door of the guest room, where Alex Thompson now spent his nights. For Sophia, that silence was more deafening than any shout. It was the sound of the end, the soundtrack of a love crumbling like sand through her fingers. In the beginning, their marriage had been a symphony. Alex, an up-and-coming event planner in Los Angeles, was a man of grand gestures and promises whispered in her ear. He had seen her dance on the stage of the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion and said she wasn't just a dancer, but dance itself incarnate. Sophia, then the principal dancer of a renowned company, believed him. She believed in the impromptu trips to Napa Valley, in the hands that held hers with a firmness that seemed to promise eternity, in the plans for a future they painted together on nights fueled by wine and intimacy. They were the couple everyone admired, proof that passion could survive the daily grind. But time, that merciless sculptor, began to carve a different reality. After 3 years, the symphony gave way to indifferent white noise. Alex's late arrivals, once excused with a kiss and an apology, became the norm. The living room couch, once just furniture, turned into his bed. His gaze, which once devoured her, now passed through her as if she were made of glass. Sophia tried to find explanations in the chaos of everyday life. His company was growing, the responsibilities were bigger, the pressure overwhelming. She told herself this as she prepared the breakfast he rarely ate, as she straightened the tie he barely noticed. The arrival of Lily, their 5-year-old daughter who was a miniature sun in Sophia's increasingly grey universe, should have been the glue to bind them again. And for a while, it seemed it would be. Alex was a present father, enchanted by the little figure running through the house with her own dreams of point shoes. But fatherhood for him became a performative act, a role fulfilled on weekends while the partnership of marriage evaporated. Sophia clung to her daughter, channeling all her energy and love into the girl, in the silent hope that her dedication and patience would be a beacon, guiding her husband back home, back to her. But time didn't bring Alex back. Time brought loneliness, a cold and constant companion that sat with her at the dinner table and embraced her in the empty bed. Dance, her first and most faithful passion, became her refuge. In the studio, among the mirrors and the discipline of ballet, Sophia wasn't the ignored wife. She was the artist, the force, the expression. Each plie, each arabesque was a way to purge the pain, to transform anguish into beauty. It was on stage that she still felt whole. The news hit like a dull, unexpected blow on a rainy Tuesday. The company's director called her into his office, his face a mask of professional discomfort. He spoke about renewal, about fresh energies, about the need to make room for emerging talents. And then the name was uttered, Vanessa Hart. The name hung in the air, poisonous. Vanessa, an ex-girlfriend of Alex's, a shadow from the past that Sophia believed had faded. She would be the new principal dancer. Sophia felt the ground vanish, years of dedication, sweat, muscles pushed to the limit, all unraveling in a polished corporate speech. She tried to argue, to question, but the decision was final. The humiliation was a bitter taste in her mouth. It was only later, talking to a sympathetic colleague in the hallway, that the full truth struck her, a knife twisting in the wound. The recommendation for Vanessa's spot had come from one of the company's major sponsors, Alex's firm. The final puzzle piece fell into place when she got home, her heart an anvil in her chest. Alex was there, something rare for a weekday afternoon. He didn't meet her eyes. With a coldness that cut deeper than any blade, he confessed. Yes, he had requested her dismissal. He claimed it was best for the family, that she needed to dedicate more time to Lily, to the home. "You don't need to work anymore, Sophia. I can take care of everything," he said, as if offering her a gift, not robbing her of her identity. The betrayal was multifaceted, a monster with many heads. It wasn't just the infidelity she now suspected with Vanessa, but the deliberate sabotage of her career, her passion, her essence. He didn't want her as a partner. He wanted her as a decorative accessory in his successful life. The erasure was his project. That same night, the digital world rubbed salt in the wound. A photo on Vanessa's profile, posted hours earlier, showed her smiling, radiant. Around her neck, a delicate diamond necklace, a unique piece that Sophia recognized instantly. It was the same necklace Alex had given her on their last wedding anniversary. The jewel, he said, had been designed exclusively for her. There it was, on the neck of the woman who had stolen her place on stage and, as now became clear, her place in her husband's life. The air grew thin. Every object in that house seemed to mock her, every memory now a lie. The dream had become a claustrophobic nightmare. She looked at Lily's sleeping face, so serene and unaware of the storm crashing over her mother. And in that moment, a cutting clarity pierced the fog of pain and despair. Staying wasn't an option. Staying was dying a little each day. She didn't know where she would go or how she would manage, but she knew she had to leave. She had to take her daughter and her shattered dignity and flee that house built on lies before the silence finally suffocated her. The decision once made brought a strange calm. It was the calm in the eye of the hurricane, the moment of focus before inevitable action. She began packing a suitcase, in silence, moving like a shadow in her own home. Each piece of Lily's clothing, each toy, was a reminder of what was at stake. She wasn't just fleeing, she was fighting to save her daughter's future from being raised in the shadow of that dysfunction. She grabbed her savings, the documents, and the car keys. One last look at the bedroom, at the life she was leaving behind. There was no sadness, just a cold resolve. The dancer was wounded, but the woman was about to discover a strength she didn't know she possessed. The road at night was a dark and lonely ribbon, cut only by the beam of the car's headlights. The fine rain that had fallen over Los Angeles turned the asphalt into a black mirror, reflecting the city lights shrinking behind her, like dying stars. In the back seat, Lily slept, oblivious to her mother's escape, her face serene, cradled by the vehicle's gentle motion. For Sophia, every mile driven was a small victory, a step away from the suffocation of that house, that marriage. The adrenaline of the decision still pulsed in her veins, a mix of fear and a strange wild euphoria of liberation. She drove without a certain destination, just with the certainty that she needed distance, fresh air to breathe, a place where silence wasn't synonymous with abandonment. Her thoughts were a whirlwind, reliving the coldness in Alex's gaze, the image of the necklace on Vanessa's neck, the humiliating dismissal. The pain was a physical presence, a sharp stab in her chest that made her catch her breath. It was in that instant of distraction, a fraction of a second when tears blurred her vision and the pain became unbearable, that the world tilted. A car coming in the opposite direction, skidding on the wet road, spun out. Sophia swerved the wheel instinctively, a desperate maneuver to protect the side where her daughter slept. The sound of twisting metal was sharp, brutal. Her car was thrown to the shoulder, stopping with a violent jolt against a small retaining wall. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the heavy silence of indifference, but the acute silence of shock, punctuated by Lily's frightened cry echoing in the cabin. Sophia turned, her body protesting with a searing pain in her left leg. "Mommy?" The girl's voice was a trembling thread in the darkness. "It's okay, my love. Mommy's here," she replied, her voice hoarse as she struggled to unbuckle her seatbelt. The pain in her leg was intense, but the relief at seeing Lily just scared without a scratch overrode everything. Lights from other cars stopping, sirens approaching, all seemed distant, muffled. In the hospital, the smell of antiseptic and the cold lighting were the antithesis of everything she desired. The diagnosis was a minor accident, as they said, but the consequences for her were profound. Some cuts, bruises, and a discreet scar that would mark her face, a permanent reminder of that night. The worst, however, was in her leg, a knee trauma that, according to the doctor, would sideline her from dancing for an indeterminate time. The phrase hung in the sterile room air, the final sentence for the career that had already been sabotaged. She, who communicated with her body, was now imprisoned by it. It was in this scene of absolute vulnerability that Alex appeared. He entered the room like a hurricane of calculated remorse, his eyes red, his face twisted in a mask of despair that Sophia no longer knew if it was genuine. He cried, thick tears, from a man who seemed to have seen the abyss. He held her hand, the same hand he hadn't touched with affection in months, and begged for forgiveness. He spoke about the pressure, about the fear of losing her to the world of dance, about a sickly jealousy that consumed him and led him to commit the biggest mistake of his life. The words were a well-rehearsed script of regret, each sentence designed to hit her weakest point. He promised to change, promised to win her back, promised to be the husband and father he never was. Sophia listened, exhausted. The physical pain mixed with emotional fatigue. She looked to the side where Lily, now lightly sedated, slept in a small bed next to hers. Her daughter's face was the only thing that mattered. Where would she go with a small child, no job, an injured leg, and a soul in tatters? The impulsive flight now revealed itself in all its recklessness. Reason, cold and pragmatic, said she had no choice. The world out there was scary, and Alex, despite everything, still represented material security, a known port amid the storm. She was cornered, not by him, but by the circumstances he himself had created. One last chance. The words formed in her mind, not as an act of forgiveness, but as a survival strategy. She looked at him, her eyes dry, her voice firm despite the weakness. 1 year, Alex, she said, and the sound of her own voice surprised her with its strength. You have 1 year. If in 1 year you're still the same man, if this change is just another one of your performances, I'll hand you the divorce papers myself. And this time, nothing will stop me from leaving. The return home was the bitterest surrender of her life. Each limping step supported by a crutch was a reminder of her defeat. The house, which days before was a prison from which she had tried to escape, now was her hospital and her captivity. But something had changed within her. The vulnerability of the accident had forged a new resolve. She wasn't returning as the wife who passively waited for her husband's love. She was returning as an observer, a silent judge in her own home. That night, as Alex helped her lie down, adjusting the pillows with a care that seemed rehearsed, Sophia pulled Lily close. The girl, with the pure intuition of children, sensed the tension in the air. In a whisper, so only her daughter could hear, Sophia sealed a pact. "We're going to give Daddy some time, my love," she said, stroking her daughter's hair. "We'll see if his heart becomes good again. If he goes back to being our daddy from before, we'll stay. If not, you and I will find a new place to dance, just the two of us." Lily didn't understand the depth of those words, but she understood the agreement. She nodded, her eyes big and serious, and hugged her mother tightly. It was a secret pact, a silent alliance between mother and daughter against the uncertainty of the future. The timer had been set. 1 year. 365 days for a man to prove that a soul could be redeemed, or for a woman to gather the strength needed to finally learn to fly alone. The start of the pact was marked by an almost impeccable performance of redemption. Alex Thompson, the man who had become a stranger in his own home, now strove to be omnipresent. He woke up earlier, and the smell of fresh coffee, not prepared by Sophia's hands, filled the kitchen. He showed up with flowers, not the rare and impersonal orchids he used to have an assistant send, but the daisies and gerberas she loved, bought by him at a neighborhood florist. He sat on the living room floor to play with Lily, building block castles and listening attentively to the girls' fanciful stories about princesses and dragons. To an outside observer, the Thompson family was healing. The crisis had passed, and the prodigal husband had returned home transformed by the scare of almost losing everything. Sophia watched it all with a silent skepticism, her heart locked away. Each of Alex's gestures was meticulously analyzed. Was it genuine or just another scene in a long spectacle? She wanted to believe for Lily, for that sliver of memory of the man she had once fallen in love with. But trust, once broken, is like a shattered crystal vase. Even if you glue the pieces back, the cracks will always be there, visible in the right light. Physical therapy was a slow and painful process. Each movement to regain knee flexibility was a battle against pain and frustration. Dance, which before was her liberation, now was a bittersweet memory, a ghost haunting her in the rehabilitation clinic's mirrors. Alex accompanied her to the first sessions, the embodiment of the devoted husband, holding her hand and offering words of encouragement. But as weeks passed, the performance began to falter. Work meetings stretched late into the night again. Family dinners were replaced by important client events. LA traffic, that omnipresent and convenient excuse, became the culprit for his absences once more. The phone, which he used to leave carelessly on the table, now lived in his pocket, screen down, vibrating silently. They were small fissures in the facade of the repentant man, but for Sophia, they were canyons opening up. The silence was returning, not the heavy and hostile silence of before, but a different, more insidious silence, filled with polite excuses and empty cordiality. Her heart, which she had tried to keep open to a possibility of reconciliation, began to close again, layer by layer, like a flower protecting itself from the impending cold. The subtle turning point, the moment when hope finally gave way to resignation, didn't happen with a bang but with a whisper. It was during a charity dance event, organized by an old colleague. Sophia, still recovering, decided to go. She needed to breathe the air of her world, even if just from the audience. Alex, surprisingly, offered to accompany her. Seated in the dark velvet of the theater, watching the dancers move under the lights, a painful nostalgia invaded her. During intermission, in the crowded foyer, a familiar voice called her. "Sophia? Sophia Reed?" She turned and came face to face with a face from the past, a face that brought with it the warmth and simplicity of childhood. Marcus Hale. They had grown up together in a small Midwest town, sharing teenage dreams and secrets before life took them on different paths. He was now the owner of a respected art school in Portland, a haven for young talents. The reunion was an unexpected oasis in Sophia's emotional desert. Marcus looked at her with a kindness that asked for nothing in return, his eyes expressing genuine concern upon noticing her difficulty moving. He didn't see her as the wife of a powerful event planner or as a sidelined dancer, but simply as Sophia, the childhood friend. The conversation flowed with an ease she hadn't experienced in years. They talked about the past, the present, the dreams that had transformed. Marcus listened to her story, not the full and raw version, but enough to read between the lines. When he invited her to visit his school, perhaps to teach some classes to the younger kids, the invitation sounded less like a job offer and more like a lifeline. "Dance isn't just in your legs, Sophia. It's in your soul. The kids would feel that," he said. And those simple words validated her existence more than any grand gesture from Alex. Marcus's presence, the natural and unpretentious reconnection, didn't go unnoticed by Alex. He, who was a few feet away talking to an acquaintance, watched the scene with a narrowing gaze. The jealousy, the same emotion he had used as an excuse for his sabotage, resurfaced, but this time with flagrant hypocrisy. He approached, interrupting the conversation, his arm possessively around Sophia's waist, marking territory. It was the same man who came home smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers, the same man whose nights were filled with mysterious commitments. He was still meeting Vanessa in secret. Sophia knew it with a visceral certainty, but he felt entitled to jealousy over her. The relationship, which had gone through a false spring, plunged into an unbearable winter, a game of appearances that grew more toxic each day. The one-year pact hadn't ended yet, but for Sophia the verdict was already sealed. Sophia's patience had become a rope stretched to the maximum, tuned by daily tension and about to snap. She moved through the house like an actress in a play she hated, performing the role of wife for an audience of one, her daughter. Each "I love you" from Alex, each out-of-season gift, each promise of a family weekend that ended up cancelled at the last minute, was a grain of sand added to an already overloaded scale. She counted the days, not with hope that he would change, but with the determination of someone awaiting the end of a sentence. Communication with Marcus had become a breath of fresh air in her suffocating life. They exchanged messages, talked about art, about life, about the possibility of her really teaching in Portland. It was a pure friendship, a thread of sanity that kept her connected to who she was before becoming Mrs. Thompson. And it was this friendship, this glimpse of a possible life beyond the walls of her marriage that strengthened her for what was to come. The final blow, as often happens, didn't come from a closed-door argument, but was delivered in public for the whole world to see. The weapon was social media. The executioner was Vanessa Hart. The photo appeared in Sophia's newsfeed on a Thursday morning, posted by a mutual friend who probably had no idea of the poison they were sharing. The image was professionally lit, captured in an upscale restaurant, the kind of place Alex used to frequent for his business dinners. In it, Vanessa Hart smiled, her face tilted toward Alex, who looked at her with unmistakable intimacy. His hand rested casually on her shoulder, but it was the caption that turned the image from an indiscretion into a declaration of war. With cruel audacity, Vanessa wrote, "By the side of the one who always believed in me," and tagged Alex's profile. The ring emoji. It wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate provocation, a symbol of possession, a calculated humiliation to hit Sophia with the force of a punch. The photo spread like wildfire. In a few hours, it was on gossip blogs, shared in group chats, commented on by acquaintances and strangers. Sophia was officially the betrayed wife, the tragic figure in a real-life soap opera. Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating with messages of pity, morbid curiosity, false concerns. Each notification was a new stab. She turned off the device and stared at the empty living room. The humiliation was a heavy cloak, but beneath it, something else burned. Rage. A cold, lucid rage that scorched away the last particles of doubt and pain. The confrontation didn't happen. Alex came home that night and acted as if nothing had occurred, a cowardly tactic to see if she would bring it up. But Sophia didn't give him that satisfaction. Arguing would be giving importance, validating the power he and Vanessa thought they had over her. She treated him with icy politeness, an indifference that disarmed him more than any accusation. Her silence was no longer the silence of pain. It was the silence of contempt. The opportunity for her response, however, didn't take long to arrive. It was the launch event for the new season of the dance company, the same one that had discarded her. Sophia decided to go, not out of masochism, but because she refused to hide. Accompanied by a friend, she entered the hall with her head held high, her leg still a bit stiff, but her posture impeccable. Her presence caused an immediate murmur, and as expected, Vanessa was there, basking in the glory of her new status with Alex in tow. It was during a circle of conversations with journalists and sponsors that Vanessa saw her chance to drive in the final stake. With a voice loud enough for all to hear, she turned to Sophia with a fake smile. "It's so good to see you supporting the company, Sophia. It's hard, isn't it, being on the other side?" And then, the final thrust. "But you've always been lucky. You got the principal dancer spot because you're the sponsor's wife, after all." The air grew thin. All eyes turned to Sophia, waiting for her reaction, her denial, her tears. Alex, by Vanessa's side, remained silent, complicit. But the one who responded first wasn't Sophia. It was her old trainer, a stern but fair man who had been watching from afar. He approached the group, his face a mask of indignation. "What nonsense is this?" he said, his voice cutting through the room. Sophia Reed was the most dedicated dancer I've trained in 30 years. She earned the spot on merit, and everyone here knows it. He then turned to Alex, his gaze scorching. "The truth is that her husband, this man here, pressured the board to make her quit her career to stay home. He didn't promote her, he destroyed her." The revelation dropped like a bomb in the hall. The silence was broken by shocked gasps. Vanessa paled, and Alex seemed to have shrunk. All eyes were now on Sophia, but no longer with pity, but with a new understanding, with respect. She stepped forward, her gaze steady, not on Vanessa or Alex, but on the crowd around her. Her voice came out calm without a tremor, laden with the weight of months of suffering and the strength of a rediscovered dignity. "I lost my job, I lost my trust, and yes, I lost my husband," she said, each word clear and precise. "But my dignity, no one takes that from me." For an instant, there was absolute silence, and then one person started clapping, then another, and another. In seconds, the entire hall erupted in thunderous applause, a wave of support that enveloped her. It was a standing ovation, not for the dancer, but for the woman who, publicly humiliated, refused to be a victim and found her voice. In that moment, under everyone's gaze, Sophia was no longer the betrayed wife. She was the protagonist of her own story, and the final act was just beginning. The sound of the applause still echoed in her mind when Sophia left the event, without looking back. She didn't need to see Alex's face or Vanessa's expression to know that the power dynamic had changed irrevocably. That night wasn't an end, but a baptism by fire, the forging of a new identity. The next day, with the same silent determination with which she had once packed bags to flee, she made a call to Marcus Hale. "Is your offer still on the table?" she asked, her voice firm, without hesitation. His response was immediate and warm. The door he had opened for her wasn't just a professional opportunity, it was an emergency exit that she was now ready to use. The move to Portland was quick, almost surgical. Sophia didn't want a contentious divorce, no more public battles. She wanted peace. She left behind the luxurious house, the expensive furniture, the past. She took with her only her clothes, some sentimental items, and most importantly, Lily. For the girl, the move was presented as an adventure, a new city to explore, a new school with a big dance studio where Mommy would teach again. Lily's genuine joy at knowing she'd be closer to Uncle Marcus was the final confirmation that Sophia was on the right path. Life in Portland was the antidote to the poison of Los Angeles. Marcus's art school was a vibrant place, full of creative energy, where talent was nurtured with respect and passion. Sophia started by teaching the children's classes. Her legs still didn't allow the complex leaps and turns of professional ballet, but her dancer's soul was intact. She taught with her body, her voice, her gaze. She transmitted to the kids not just technique, but love for the art, the discipline that strengthens body and spirit. The students adored her. She wasn't the ex-principal dancer, the woman from a scandal. She was Aunt Sophia, the teacher who made them believe they could fly. Marcus gave her full creative freedom. Seeing the sparkle return to her eyes, he encouraged her to go beyond teaching. "Why don't you create a choreography for our end-of-year show?" he suggested. At first she hesitated. Choreographing was exposing herself, putting her vision on stage to be judged. But the supportive environment at the school was so different from the predatory competitiveness of her old company that she accepted the challenge. She dove into the work, spending sleepless nights in the studio, designing movements, choosing music, transforming her experiences, her pain, and her rediscovery into dance. The result was a show that captivated the city. The local press and then the capitals started talking about the revelation choreographer from Portland. Sophia Reed's name, which had been dragged through the mud of gossip, now returned to the spotlight in culture sections, associated with talent, innovation, and resilience. While Sophia's star ascended, Alex Thompson's began to decline. The scandal at the dance company's event had repercussions. The image of an upright and powerful man he had so cultivated was tarnished. Some clients, especially those from brands with strong appeal to female audiences, began to pull away discreetly. Contracts were cancelled, projects postponed. The arrogance that had taken him to the top was the same that now accelerated his fall. He had become a liability, a name associated with a type of behavior that the modern corporate world was increasingly unwilling to tolerate. Vanessa, the trophy mistress, proved a poor investment. Her presence by his side was a constant reminder of the scandal, and her career as principal dancer, built on sabotaging another, never truly took off. She lacked the charisma, the artistic depth that Sophia possessed. Without Alex's power and prestige to propel her, she was just another technically competent dancer, but without soul. Alex's company, once an empire of luxury events, entered a silent but deep crisis. He, who once felt like the master of the universe, now watched helplessly as everything he built crumbled. It was in this scene of decay that he saw a report on television. It was a prestigious cultural program, and the main story was about the new phenomenon in contemporary dance. And there she was, Sophia, being interviewed, speaking with an eloquence and confidence he had never seen. images of her show were displayed, the beauty of the movements, the emotion overflowing from the stage. She was radiant, more beautiful and alive than he had ever seen her. Her success was a mirror reflecting his own failure. The man who had once decreed she should abandon her career to take care of the home now watched her triumph on the TV screen in his empty and silent living room. A belated desperation hit him. He tried to call. Her number had changed. He drove to Portland, showed up at the art school's door, a pathetic figure with a wilted bouquet of flowers. Marcus intercepted him at the entrance with a calm firmness. "She doesn't want to talk to you, Alex. Your time is over. Please respect her new life." Alex insisted, tried to force his way in but was barred. Defeated, he stayed across the street, watching. He saw Sophia leave the studio, laughing at something a small student told her. He saw Lily run into her arms, happy, and he saw Marcus approach the two, not as an intruder, but as part of that new and complete family landscape. The man who thought he had everything, and who had given up what really mattered, realized, too late, that now he had absolutely nothing. Peace was a feeling Sophia almost no longer recognized. For years, her emotional life had been a battlefield, a succession of anxious waits, sharp disappointments, and a noisy loneliness. Peace, she discovered, wasn't the absence of problems, but the presence of herself. It was waking up in the morning and the first thought not being anguish. It was looking at her daughter and feeling pure joy, not tinged by fear of the future. It was walking without the constant weight of a performance, that of being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the woman who endured everything in silence. In Portland, by Marcus's side, peace became her new routine. He was the antithesis of Alex. His strength didn't come from ostentation or control, but from a serene self-confidence that didn't need to diminish anyone to assert itself. He never treated her as a broken woman who needed fixing, but as a complete artist who needed space to flourish. Their partnership was built slowly, on the solid foundation of friendship. It started with end-of-day conversations in the studio, simple dinners where Lily excitedly recounted her day, Sunday park walks. Marcus didn't try to fill the void Alex had left. He simply helped Sophia discover that she herself could fill any void. The declaration of love, when it came, was as natural as the sunrise. They were on the porch of the small house Sophia had rented, watching the stars after Lily was asleep. The silence between them was comfortable, a silence of communion, not absence. It was Marcus who broke it, his voice low but firm. "You don't need a man to complete you, Sophia. You're the most complete person I know," he said, turning to her. "But if one day you want a partner to walk beside you, to applaud your flights and catch you if you stumble, I'm here." There was no pressure in his words, no urgency of conquest. It was an offer, an invitation, and Sophia, for the first time in a long time, felt her heart open without fear. The love that arose between them wasn't the feverish and overwhelming passion of the start of her marriage to Alex, a fire that consumed everything and quickly burned out. It was a constant flame, warm and welcoming, a love built on mutual admiration, respect, and complicity. Lily, with the intuitive wisdom of children, noticed the change. She saw how Marcus looked at her mother, with the affection that went beyond friendship. He had become a constant and happy presence in their lives, the Uncle Marcus who taught her to draw, who told the best stories, and who made her mother smile in a way she hadn't smiled in a long, long time. The wedding was the celebration of that found peace. There was no big party, no hundreds of guests or the ostentation that had marked her union with Alex. It was a simple ceremony, at sunset, on a quiet beach they loved. The only guests were a handful of close friends and family. Sophia wore a light dress that danced with the sea breeze. Marcus waited at the improvised altar in the sand, his gaze full of calm and deep love. The most emotional moment, however, was when Lily, with a flower crown in her hair, walked up to them, carrying the rings in a small shell. She handed over the rings with solemn seriousness, and then hugged them both, forming a circle of affection that sealed not just the union of a couple, but the formation of a family. As Marcus placed the ring on her finger, Sophia didn't feel the weight of a promise, but the lightness of a choice. She was choosing a partner, not a savior. She was choosing partnership, not dependence. She was choosing a love that encouraged her to fly, not one that tried to clip her wings. In that moment, with the sound of the waves as witness, she understood that true love wasn't about finding someone to complete her, but about finding someone worth sharing her wholeness with. While Sophia celebrated the start of a new chapter, an official envelope arrived in Alex Thompson's hands in Los Angeles. He was in his office, or what remained of it. The company, emptied of clients and prestige, was in bankruptcy proceedings. The designer furniture, once symbols of his success, now seemed just expensive objects in a mausoleum of ambition. He was alone. Vanessa had left him months earlier, as soon as she realized the ship was sinking, off in search of another sponsor for her dreams of grandeur. Business friends had distanced themselves. He was a pariah in his own ruined kingdom. With trembling hands, he opened the envelope. Inside, the divorce papers, signed, finalized. It was the official end, the last connection to the life he himself had destroyed. In that instant, looking at Sophia's signature on the paper, a painful clarity hit him. It wasn't the loss of his wife that hurt most. It was the awareness of what he had really lost. He had lost the woman who loved him, not for his power or money, but for the man he could have been, the woman who believed in him when even he didn't. The partner he sabotaged out of insecurity and selfishness. He had traded a treasure for a cheap imitation and in the end was left with nothing. Loneliness was the final and just price for his choices. The stage was her rediscovered universe. Under the warm lights, Sophia's body moved with a fluidity that transcended technique. The knee injury had left a memory, a deeper bodily awareness, but no longer limited her. Each movement was a word, each sequence a sentence, and the entire choreography a poem about fall and rebirth. She no longer danced to prove something to anyone, not even herself. She danced because it was her purest language, the expression of a soul that had crossed hell and found peace on the other side. That night, the theater was packed. The success of her previous creations had generated anticipation that turned into sold-out tickets and an audience that held its breath with every scene. At the end of the show, when the lights came up on her, breathless and radiant in the center of the stage, the silence was broken by an explosion of applause. They weren't the polite claps for a principal dancer, nor the pity claps for a humiliated woman. They were claps of admiration, of catharsis, of recognition. The audience on its feet wasn't ovating just the artist, but the story of resilience she embodied. As the curtain closed, the reality waiting in the dressing room was infinitely more gratifying than any public acclaim. Marcus was there, his gaze overflowing with pride and love, holding a simple bunch of freesias, their scent filling the small space. He said nothing, just hugged her, an embrace that communicated everything. But it was the small figure that broke free from his hand and ran toward her that represented the true victory. Lily, now a 7-year-old girl with her mother's bright eyes, hugged her legs with all her strength. She lifted her face, pure and childish admiration stamped on her features, and said with a clarity that hit Sophia deep in her soul, "Mommy, now you're shining again." The tears that came to Sophia's eyes weren't of pain or sadness. They were tears of gratitude, of a cycle finally closing. She knelt, ignoring any protest from her knee, and got to her daughter's level, her face wet but her smile serene. She was shining, not under the artificial lights of a stage, but under the light of true love and self-acceptance. She was finally whole, finally at peace. Far away in a silent apartment in Los Angeles, Alex Thompson watched life pass by the window. Bankruptcy was a done deal, loneliness his only companion. He saw couples strolling on the street, parents playing with their kids in the park, and each scene of everyday happiness was a sharp reminder of what he had thrown away. The image of Sophia, triumphant and at peace, haunted his thoughts, not with anger, but with the melancholic weight of regret. Too late, he understood that true power wasn't in controlling someone's fate, but in having the courage to walk beside them, in equality. The love he had lost wasn't just that of a wife, it was that of an extraordinary woman who for a time believed he could be too. He had been the architect of his own ruin, and now he would have eternity to live in the rubble. Sophia, for her part, rarely thought of him. Her past was no longer an open wound, but a scar that told a story of survival, a story she had turned into art. That night, after putting Lily to bed, she and Marcus walked silently through the house, complicity filling the air. She stopped in front of a large mirror in the living room, the same one she used to rehearse. She looked at her reflection, the woman staring back, and a final thought crystallized in her mind. The definitive message of her journey, the truth she now carried in every fiber of her being. Some men are built to pull the ground out from under our feet, to leave us in free fall in the void. But it's precisely in that space, in that abyss where there's nothing to hold on to, that a woman learns to dance alone. And when she learns, her flight becomes unstoppable. What did you think of this story? From 0 to 10, what score would you give? Subscribe to the channel and click the bell to receive all our stories. And take the opportunity to watch another surprising story by clicking on the screen. Thank you and see you next time.